Hello students, guiding students with special needs. Let's see an introduction. You might have come across students with varying abilities to learn. Some learn fast, some learn slowly, and some have pronounced learning problems. You, as a teacher, will have to deal with these problems in your daily classroom transactions. To you, each child is an individual who needs to be helped to learn and perform. This lesson aims at sensitizing you to their problems and how you as a teacher can guide students having these problems. Understanding special problems. You may be having one or more of students in your classrooms having some problems. The problems are of various types and due to various reasons. The questions that may come up in your mind may be, why are these learning problems? Why each student is not able to learn and perform equally well in the same stimulus to situation simultaneously? The factors that cause learning problems and performance difficulties can be listed as follows. Lower level of intellectual functioning and development delay, retarded development, vision problems, hearing and speech problems, damage to limbs, absence, deformation or problems with movement of muscles, restricting performance in certain areas. Problems with psychological processes like perception, attention, memory and problems of visual motor coordination resulting in specific learning difficulties in reading, writing, spelling and arithmetic. Besides, there are home and environmental factors. Let's see them. Lack of parental love and affection, lack of acceptance by other family members, lack of opportunities for interaction and learning, inappropriate child rearing practices. There are other factors which cause learning problems and which are related to the school environment. Lack of teachers' acceptance of the student and low expectancies regarding learning and performance of the student, unpleasant socio-emotional classroom behavior, lack of acceptance by non-disabled peers and willingness to share feelings, responsibilities, privileges and other facilities. Absence of quality teaching matched to individual needs. Lack of adjustment and adaptation of physical facilities to special needs of students. The learning problems may arise out of one single factor or a number of factors or interplay of different factors in different sets of causal reasons. The estimated percentage of people suffering from varying degree of disability is around 4 in India. This would increase to 20 if milder form of disabilities is also counted. Thus, it is very natural that you as a teacher would definitely come across such students in your school. To you, each student should be a unique person. Though human abilities are to great extent inherited, yet quite a substantial part of it is also acquired through environment in the process of socialization. You may be aware of the debate on nature and nurture in the field of psychology. The nature and nurture makes all individuals unequal in terms of physical and mental attributes and endowments. But the human organism is prone to damage through disease and injury. This damage is not equal in all cases. In fact, if you ponder, the degree of disabilities or abilities is a continuum. It is also true that every person with obvious physical, mental or emotional limitation is capable of some work or the other. But within a range, these are taken as normal, while beyond certain range, these are taken as impairment, disabilities or handicap. The World Health Organization manual defines impairment as any loss or abnormality of psychological or anatomical structure or function. A disability is defined as any restriction or lack or ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. A handicap has been defined as a disadvantage for a given individual resulting from an impairment or disability that limits or prevents the fulfillment of a role that is normal for that individual. For example, International Labour Organization perceives it differently when it defines disabled person as an individual whose prospects of securing, retaining and advancing in suitable employment are substantially reduced as a result of a duly recognized physical or mental impairment. One can hardly arrive at a rigid definition, but people commonly agree that disability is a consequence of impairment leading to functional limitation or activity restriction, and the person having disability is perceived as being different from the normal people in the society. You need not go into the controversies of handicapped and disabled. Nowadays, the phrase persons with disability is generally used. Now, what are the kinds of disabilities? The nature of deficiency can be categorized as locomotor, visual, speech and hearing, mental. It includes mental retardation, mental illness, autism, other emotional disorders, specific learning disabilities, cerebral palsy and some other types depending on the disease that causes it, such as cancer, heart disease. These disabilities can further be categorized as mild, moderate, severe and profound depending on their severity. Partial and total disabilities. In 1986, the Government of India issued orders prescribing definitions of mild, moderate, severe and profound categories of each disability. Details of testing mechanism and modalities have been laid down in a publication of the Government of India, Ministry of Welfare, and titled Uniform Definitions of the Physically Handicapped. Locomotor disability. The extent of disability in terms of percentage due to various conditions in different parts of the body has been categorized as follows. First one is mild, which is less than 40%, moderate 40% to 74%, severe 75% to 97%, profound or total 100%. Mental retardation. IQ level has been the measure of mental retardation, and classification of different degrees of mental retardation are as follows. Mild mental retardation, IQ level is 50 to 70. Moderate mental retardation, IQ 35 to 49. Severe mental retardation, IQ level is 20 to 34. Profound mental retardation, IQ under 20. Although these standardizations are a positive step towards defining the extent of a disability, it may be noted these definitions have not acquired enough popularity. The Rehabilitation Council of India Act 1992 defines various impairments as follows. Visually handicapped means a person who suffers from any of the following conditions: total absence of sight, or visual acuity not exceeding 6 by 60 or 20 by 200 in the better eye with the correcting lenses, or limitation of the field of vision subtending an angle of degree 20 or worse. Hearing handicap means deafness with hearing impairment of 70 decibels and above in the better ear, or total loss of hearing in both ears. Locomotor disability means a person's inability to execute distinctive activities associated with moving both him or herself and objects from place to place, and such inability resulting from affliction of either bones, joints, muscles or nerves. Mental retardation means a condition of arrested or incomplete development of mind of a person which is specially characterized by subnormality of intelligence. Pandey and Advani have discussed the implications of two sets of definitions given by Government of India. Here again, the definitions are different since the Council's purpose is to assist and regulate manpower development for rehabilitation and not to provide concessions and facilities. At this stage, it will be appropriate to mention that the definitions of the government are fraught with some difficulties. Some of the problems thrown up by these definitions are as follows. The pre-1986 definition of blindness makes no mention of low vision. The post-1986 definition, though makes a mention, denies any facility or concession to anyone having less than 40% disability. According to the Indian Council of Medical Research, there are 5 low vision children for every totally blind child. According to one estimate of World Health Organization, there are 3 lakh blind children under 15 years of age in India. This means that there might be 1.5 million children with some impairment of vision which can be corrected by low vision aids. The definition of 20/200 is also inapplicable in rural areas. A person with that amount of vision can do practically everything expected of him or her in a rural environment. Therefore, a more down-to-earth definition of blindness and a workable definition of low vision for the purpose of concessions and assistance are required. In a meeting of World Health Organization consultants held in Bangkok in July 1992, the following definition of low vision has been recommended. A person with low vision is one who has impairment of visual functioning even after treatment and or standard refractive correction and has a visual acuity of less than 6/18 to light perception or a visual field of less than 19 degrees from point of fixation, but who uses or is potentially able to use vision for the planning or execution of a task. This definition is worth considering for adoption for purpose of rehabilitation of the partially blind. Although very exhaustive guidelines have been given, a definition of orthopedic disability does not seem to have been developed. Certain categories of disability such as epilepsy have not been defined, although it constitutes, according to popular estimates, about 1% of the population. The definition of mental retardation based on IQ levels is outmoded. It's not possible to decide retardation just on the basis of IQ. It's necessary to have a fresh look at the definitions and include other categories such as disability due to epilepsy, learning disability, disability due to certain diseases requiring rehabilitation. These should be properly defined and the definitions adopted throughout the country. The various schemes of facilities, concessions then can provide for certain categories and certain degrees of disability depending on their intended coverage, focus and affordability. Defining disability would mean that those not covered by the definition are non-disabled. This leaves a lot of people in difficulties who have marginally missed being categorized as disabled. They cannot compete with the able-bodied and at the same time are not entitled to the support admissible to the disabled. Rules have to be framed to ensure that they are normally declared medically fit unless rigid medical standards are required for a particular job since they are not disabled. In addition, they should also be made entitled to deserved support. All those with disability require measures to be taken so that the impact of disability is minimized and their latent abilities are given opportunities to develop to the fullest extent. These measures are known as rehabilitation. This is necessary because various considerations, compassionate, social, economic, human rights and equality of opportunities, institutions for disabilities, for profound disabilities, special institutions have been opened. For the blind, there are about 13 braille printing presses. Ramakrishna Vidyalaya, Coimbatore has installed a German electronic embosser which has resulted in manifold output. Similarly, Blind Relief Association, New Delhi and National Association for the Blind in Bombay have installed improved versions. The production and distribution of books for the blind, which is basic to their learning needs, are highly inadequate. There would be about 250 schools for the blind in the country. There is a National Institute of Visually Handicapped at Dehradun to provide academic inputs and materials and aids. You may have seen some of the blind schools in your area or district. Students suffering from total visual disability need to be referred to such blind schools. Such students may not be able to learn in your schools, not because they cannot, but because your school may not have Braille or a Braille printed book for their use. Similarly, there are institutions catering to the needs of the hearing or speech disabled children in the shape of schools for the deaf and dumb. They have a sign language. National Institute of Hearing Handicapped in Bombay has published a dictionary of 2,500 signs used in the country. You may have seen daily TV news in such a sign language. What may be of interest to you is that most of the state and central boards of secondary education have exempted deaf and dumb children from 3 language formula and allowed extra time and writer to the blind. There are 478 schools for deaf and dumb listed in NIH compilation, 139 in Maharashtra alone. States like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh have 19 and 32 respectively. Many states have very small numbers or no such schools. There are special schools for mentally retarded and neurologically handicapped children. Neurologically handicapped children often have multiple deficits like intellectual retardation, spasticity, tremors, difficulty in focusing eyes, articulation problems, voice disorder, and even learning difficulties. They need special services. Presently, there are about 480 special schools in the country for mentally retarded and about a dozen for cerebral palsied. Autism is a rare and lifelong brain disorder with no cure. There are hardly any facilities for such children, though about 10% of them are extraordinarily gifted in various fields such as art, music, memory, etc. Tamanna, an institution for mentally retarded in New Delhi, renders services to autistic children. Autistic Society of India has also been set up under Tamanna. Multi-handicapped such as deaf, blind or visually handicapped coupled with learning difficulties have very little services available in the country. The Blind Relief Association in New Delhi provides services to blind slow learners. The Helen Keller Institute in Bombay provides education to deaf or blind children. The National Association for the Blind, Delhi, has also started a unit for multi-handicapped. But these are much too insufficient considering the occurrence. The National Sample Survey Organization estimates that children with various disabilities in the age group of 5 to 14 years are as follows. The facilities available for education in its present form would not be able to cater to the needs of even this age group, let alone the entire range age group till secondary stage. Concept and approach of inclusive schooling. The National Policy of Education NPE 1986 advocates the approach of providing integrated education for the mildly handicapped and of special education for the severely handicapped children. It says the objective should be to integrate the physically and mentally handicapped with the general community as equal partners, to prepare them for normal growth and enable them to face life with courage and confidence. The following measures will be taken in this regard. Wherever it is feasible, the education of children with motor handicaps and other mild handicaps will be common with that of the others. Special schools with hostels will be provided as far as possible at district headquarters for the severely handicapped children. Adequate arrangements will be made to give vocational training to the disabled. Teachers training program will be reoriented in particular for teachers of primary classes to deal with special difficulties of the handicapped children. Voluntary efforts for the education of the disabled will be encouraged in every possible manner. The integrated education of the disabled was launched even before the NPE 86, and its evaluation brought positive experiences. Organizations like the NCERT and many NGOs did commendable work in the field, and training programs and structures of implementation were developed in the form of resource rooms. A handbook for teachers known as Functional Assessment Guide was also developed by the NCERT, which includes the checklist to identify mild and moderate handicap. The Salamanca from Spain conference modified the integrated education into inclusive schooling concept, wherein it has been reiterated that instead of providing special teacher in each school to deal with handicapped children, the existing teachers can be enabled to handle such children by providing special training to regular teachers. Provision of facilities. The Government of India has enacted the Persons with Disabilities, Equal Opportunities, Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995 in pursuance of its commitment to the proclamation on the full participation and equality of people with disabilities in the Asian and Pacific region. Appropriate government and local authorities to provide children with disabilities free education. Ensure that every child with a disability has access to free education in an appropriate environment till he attains the age of 18 years. Endeavor to promote the integration of students with disabilities in the normal schools. Promote setting up of special schools in government and private sectors for those in need of special education in such a manner that children with disabilities living in any part of the country have access to such schools, and endeavor to equip the special schools for children with disabilities with vocational training facilities. The appropriate government and the local authorities shall by notification make schemes for the following: conducting part-time classes in respect of children with disabilities who, having completed education up to class 5 and could not continue their studies on a whole-time basis. Conducting special part-time classes for providing functional literacy for children in the age group of 16 and above. Imparting non-formal education by utilizing the available manpower in rural areas after giving them appropriate orientation. Imparting education through open schools or open universities. Conducting classes and discussions through interactive electronic or other media, and providing every child with disability free of cost special books and equipment needed for his or her education. Research for designing and developing new assistive devices and teaching aids. The appropriate government agencies shall initiate or cause to be initiated research by official and non-governmental agencies for the purpose of designing and developing new assistant devices, teaching aids, special teaching materials or such other items as are necessary to give a child with disability equal opportunities in education. Appropriate government agencies to set up teachers training institutions to develop trained manpower for schools for children with disabilities. The appropriate government agencies shall set up adequate number of teachers training institutions and assess the national institutes and other voluntary organizations to develop teachers training programs specializing in disabilities so that requisite trained manpower is available for special schools and integrated schools for children with disabilities. Now, let us summarize. We have to make conscious efforts for helping children with special needs. These children can be identified through their appearance and behavioral patterns. The characteristics and behavior patterns of such children have been listed in the checklist. The items in the checklist are in question form. These can be answered in yes or no. Some general guidelines have also been given. Your objective is to understand each item in the checklist and general guidelines. You may discuss with your colleagues and other person you consider will be helpful to you in achieving this objective. It will be helpful if you could memorize the items with understanding. It will always help you as a teacher. The first step, to identify children for closer observation, take children who have observable physical deformity or impairment. For example, children with deformity in their legs and hands, eye squint or hump, are usually complaining about health, pains and fatigue, who show consistently poor academic performance and who have very poor handwriting, spellings, reading and arithmetic. Second step, closely observe the child on the basis of the questions provided in the checklist. Complete the checklist. Put a tick against each item under yes or no as the case may be. Now, let us see the checklist for the identification of children with special needs. The questions: does the child have observable deformity in the eye? Do eyes of the child water frequently? Do eyes of the child become red? Does the child rub eyes very frequently? Does the child blink frequently? Does the child complain about pain in eyes frequently? Does the child cover one eye and tilts the head forward? Does the child walk with head downward? Does the child frequently bump into objects which are waist high only on one side or below knee level? Does the child keep books very close to the eyes for reading? Does the child very frequently ask other children when taking down notes from the blackboard? Does the child complain about headache following close eye work? If the response to at least 4 items is yes, the child is suspected to have visual disability.